Hey everyone, Brian Zane here, and it feels great to be back this week reviewing shows once again after I was gone all last week, laid out with a cold. I'm not 100% yet, but I am close to it, and I feel good enough to review this NXT Halloween Havoc 2021. You can see I dressed very appropriately for the occasion as well. A lot to talk about on this show tonight, beginning with the fact that a lot of the show is punctuated with a lot of appearances by Chucky the Killer Doll. It's a big tie-in with the show airing on the USA Network. He introduces the show and also pops in occasionally to kind of give exposition or kind of say, I like scary things, like before bigger match, the title matches and stuff. This is what synergy looks like, folks. And look, I get it. I appreciate throwbacks to the old WCW stuff as much as anybody. And you can make that connection because Chucky, Halloween Havoc, he does interact with Bron Breakker a couple of times on this show. Like he's in the background of one thing and then he talks to Braun through one of his little pre-match packages and stuff. So we get some of that, and I did smile for that, but most of all, I was just annoyed by the presence of Chucky in this thing. I thought it was a little hokey. A lot of like the animations that you saw Chucky use in these videos were just recycled from segment to segment. Just not a lot of thought and care was put into this. It's just, to me, it was a bit too cheesy, even for this NXT 2.0. The show begins with a Stairway to Hell ladder match for the NXT Women's Tag Titles as Io Shirai and Zoe Stark defend against the Toxic Attraction and Indy Hartwell and Persia Pirotta. It is a ladder match airing one night. That's one night after Raw did one of their own in the main event. It's a pretty fun ladder match. The ladies really explore the space in this one. In particular, Io Shirai, more on her later. There's a part early in the match where Gacy just breaks one of the ladders, so she goes to kick the ladder over when the champs are on it together and one of the supports just falls off. There's a big spot in the middle of this thing where all the ladies take turns getting on and off the big tall ladder in the middle. There's springboard jumping onto them from a couple of ladies. Zoe is knocked off the ladder, but she has a great recovery where she lands on the top rope and does a springboard onto her opponents on the outside. Pirotta showing off some nice strength here. At one point she powerbombs Gigi Dolan through a ladder in the corner. It looks really brutal. Speaking of brutal, kind of a scary moment here where Zoe goes for, I think, a Phoenix Splash off the top, but she kind of lands on her feet before splashing onto Pirotta on the ladder, and it looks like she rolls one or both of her ankles in the landing. So that was kind of scary. Hope she's okay with that. Big high spot, the high spot of high spots in this match is Shirai on the tall ladder, getting dumped off into the outside onto a ladder bridge. Hard landing by Io here. She definitely earned her pay with the abuse she put herself through in this matchup. Gigi Dolan knocking Indy off the ladder, grabbing the belts, and winning. So she and Jacy Jayne are the new women's tag team champions. A wild opening match, little botchy at times, but still on the whole pretty entertaining. The credit goes to Io, I think, for, like I said, the MVP of this matchup, for the spots and the bumps especially that she took during this thing. I thought it was, that being said, good to get the belts off of her and Zoe Stark, because I didn't like that pairing from the beginning when they were just kind of a last minute, oh, they're going to win the tag belts now. And then they spent exactly 1 week trying to build that story of they don't like each other, and they just gave up. And so they just kind of floated around as champions for a while, and nobody cared because they didn't care about building their particular story. I think that if they dedicated a little more time, say more than 1 week at doing it, it wouldn't be so, I wouldn't be in such a hurry to get the belts off them and say, fuck them and have literally anyone else hold those belts, at least as an established team of the Toxic Attraction. Well, last week, Carmelo Hayes left his North American Championship behind with Dexter Lumis and Johnny Gargano, and this week, he and Trick Williams go to a spooky house to try and get it back. Think of this as kind of like the Haunted House of Horrors match from last year's Havoc with Cameron Grimes versus Lumis, but even less wrestling this time around, if you can believe that. Also, not as good. There were a couple of moments where I took away from it going, oh, that popped me because it was a reference to something from last year, or Andre Chase just shows up and he's great. But the whole thing is just Williams and Hayes just getting perpetually spooked by the people around them. It's just more, oh, there's a scary person. Oh, there's a scary person. And it goes for 2 segments like this. And it just kind of got old after a while. They finally get the belt and try to escape, but then Gargano and Lumis, who've been watching them this whole time with security cameras, they come in for the attack. And then they just kind of let them leave with the belt after everyone scares them away and everything. And then Gargano's like, next year we're doing Halloween at my house. And they all do the Lumis thumbs up, including all the zombies, which was kind of funny. But that was that. It was just they had to get the spooky stuff in there, kind of get the whole Halloween vibe and just, Dexter Lumis and Gargano are great. They have a great vibe together. So I like that pairing. And it's just like, and of course, like I said, Andre Chase, hilarious in any kind of the context you put him in so far in 2.0. I wasn't feeling this one. We see Grayson Waller in the arena dressed as Dracula. He appoints himself to be the new host of Halloween Havoc since the originally scheduled host, LA Knight, has for whatever reason not shown up to the event. So he's there. He wants everyone to have a great time, but then Joe Gacy interrupts him. He says Halloween is not a very inclusive holiday because it sexualizes and exploits people. He says violence is not the answer, and as soon as he says that, his opponent Malik Blade drop kicks him right in the mouth, and so we have that match, Gacy versus Malik Blade. As the match begins, security footage shows Harland entering the building. I thought that was weird because we literally just came out of the haunted house thing with Hayes and Williams and Gargano and Lumis, where they established, oh, there's security cameras everywhere here, so I can see what they're doing at all times. So to go from that security camera thing to a different security camera thing in the same show was pretty confusing. I thought, oh my God, they're showing like what Hayes and Williams are doing in the picture-in-picture. No, it's just Harland. Malik gets thrown out of the ring and Harland does show up in person. He grabs Blade, but then Gacy tells him not to do anything, throws Blade back in the ring, and Gacy takes care of Malik himself with his springboard, a handspring clothesline thing to win the matchup. And so then he tells Harland to trust him. The big silent guy goes along with him. So more questions and answers as to, what the relationship with these guys are and where this is going to go. But like I said a couple weeks ago when I saw them interact, I'm very curious to see how Gacy can maybe manipulate Harland into a monster of his own design. There's a vignette for Kaylee Ray where she says she's getting no respect since coming to NXT 2.0, despite having been the longest reigning NXT UK Women's Champion. She says it's time to rage as she bashes a bunch of stuff with a sledgehammer. And then we go to the Halloween party backstage where all the wrestlers and some extras are in costumes. They're kind of chatting it up as Grayson Waller kind of schmoozes with everybody. So you see a lot of different characters here. He talks to Ikemen Jiro and Kushida, who for some reason don't know anything about this strange custom of Halloween. They walk off and Grayson just goes, wow, foreigners are weird. Like, wow, we're just going to casually drop that line in there? Okay. And then the whole thing ends with Cameron Grimes trying to hit on some of the ladies, but he totally whiffs. And Grayson tries to give him some encouragement. And that's the end of that segment. We do get a follow-up with the party later on in the show, which I did pop for because you've got this interaction with Robert Stone as Elvis and Zion Quinn dressed as Zion Quinn. I don't know what he was going for, but basically like Stone's doing like the Elvis like voice and the dancing and everything, and Zion just slams into the table. And the best part of this is Stone is still selling it by doing like the hip shake of Elvis and still making the Elvis noise, like the oh, as he's selling, which was fabulous. It's time for the Diamond Mine Open Challenge. Malcolm Bivens shows up with all of his crew and tells anyone in the back to pick their poison. Who will come out to answer the challenge and who will they challenge in this open invitation? Odyssey Jones comes out and wants a piece of Roderick Strong. Bivens says his fat ass is not 205 pounds, but the match happens anyway. Some good big versus little on display here. Kind of a shorter match though. When Odyssey gets the advantage near the end, the Creed brothers interfere and Odyssey takes care of them, but that gives Strong a chance to hit a big knee to win the matchup here. I thought it was short and sweet. Jones, he's the kind of guy I think who's got like money written all over him, like in due time, like not at that point yet. He kind of reminds me of Bronson Reed in a way, like the super heavyweight who's like very charismatic and has a lot of upside. And so I'm very excited to see where Odyssey goes from here. But as far as like this match goes, like, it was a good way to fill time. Raquel Gonzalez defends the NXT Women's title against Mandy Rose. As Raquel makes her entrance, we do get a shot at the outside where she rides in the building in her cool motorcycle. And all I could think of was, wait a minute, wasn't that Ember Moon's shtick last year when she re-debuted at Halloween Havoc? Anyway, it's spin the wheel, make the deal, and it lands very abruptly on Chucky's choice. We hear from Chucky the Doll again. It's a trick or street fight for this one. So right away, Mandy Rose gets the advantage by hitting Raquel with a kendo stick multiple times, but Raquel does overpower her, like beats Mandy up with a chair in the Trio of Woe. There's this point, very clever spot here where Mandy traps Raquel into one of the announcers' chairs, the office chairs, by putting the kendo stick through the arms and over her legs, trapping her in there for a bit. And then Raquel goes to sell for a bit. Mandy jaw jacks at the referee, and when she turns back around, Raquel is standing on the announce table with a hockey mask on, spraying her with a fire extinguisher. Like, okay, I'm glad you had the wherewithal to do that clever little nod to Halloween and Friday the 13th. Raquel setting up some steel stairs on the apron, but that immediately backfires on her. She does spear Mandy through a table leaning into the corner, but when she gets up, suddenly this mystery woman who is probably probably Dakota Kai, shows up and hits Raquel from behind with a shovel. That allows Mandy to hit her flying knee to win the match and become the new NXT Women's Champion, and Mandy Rose getting her first taste of championship gold here. And you see her and the rest of Toxic Attraction on the stage, and they hold all the women's gold in NXT, which I think is pretty cool and is a great way to establish them as like a dominant force in the division, which I think has been missing. I can't remember the last like female stable we've had in NXT who's been so dominant, and so I think this is a great way to just get them on the map and establish them. The mystery lady unmasks, and yep, it's Dakota Kai, and she clearly has unfinished business with Raquel, but this time it ain't gonna be for the title. Raquel had a nice long reign with the championship here, and when she first won it, I was excited for her because she did seem to be getting that Rhea Ripley push, and it did feel like she had the momentum on her side. But for whatever reason, this reign doesn't really feel like a good one to me on the whole. Like, it's hard for me to think of like very many great matches she had as champion. The one she beat Io for it to win the belt I thought was great, and this match I thought was strong and told a great story. But as far as the in-between, it's hard for me to think of any really memorable ones as far as her reign goes. But I am looking forward to the Toxic era in NXT 2.0 now. We get our last bit of Grayson Waller in the ring here. He's plugging his social media accounts when suddenly Los Angeles Knight himself makes his Better Late Than Never appearance. He is also dressed in the same Dracula costume as Grayson, and he wants to know what the deal is. And a bit of a nod to WCW here where Waller says, hey, it's not my fault you had car troubles. And LA is like, what are you talking about? How did you know I had car troubles? I was expecting him to pull a Mark Mara and go, I said a flat tire. But then Solo Sikoa makes his way to the ring. He beats up Grayson a little bit as LA powders out and Solo poses. He gets a big Uso chant because I'm not sure how well you can pick up on this. It might be kind of hard to tell, but he is Jimmy and Jay's brother. So I didn't know if you knew that. But yeah, nice little impactful appearance for Solo here. Might be leading to a match with him and Grayson next week, given how things go. But yeah, that was the story arc of Grayson Waller, the temporary host of NXT Halloween Havoc. There's a shot of Bron Breakker warming up for his match, and Chucky the Doll is sitting in there with him. He goes, don't I know you or something? Again, like they're doing the full circle thing with Chucky and like the son of Steiner, and I'm totally here for that. And then it's on for the NXT tag title match as MSK defend against Imperium. A fan has been chosen to spin the wheel and make the deal. It lands on the Lumberjack-O-Lantern match, which is basically a lumberjack match, and we got all the guys from the Halloween party earlier in all their costumes surrounding the ring for this one. And kind of a small note here is that Ikemen Jiro and Kushida are dressed in like singlets and headgear, kind of rip off of the Creed brothers who are across the ring from them. Before the break, Imperium picks a fight with the Lumberjacks for no reason, but that sets up MSK to dive onto them before break. Big strength by Fabian Eichner in this match. At one point, he's able to carry both of his opponents in a double fireman's carry after a bit of struggling, and it looked like legitimately he wasn't going to do it, but then he pulls it off, and that was great. Wes Lee jumps over the turnbuckle to dive onto everyone outside. Carter then hits Bartel with a diamond cutter off the top onto the outside, but like none of the Lumberjacks catch him. I think maybe Von Wagner's the only one who touches them like with his arms, but that's literally it. And then after these two big spots on the crowd or on the Lumberjacks, they're just gone. They evaporate, and I was like, what happened to them? Like, let's get hit with a couple moves. They fall down. It's like video game characters just kind of blink out of existence after a second. Some great back and forth from this point on. The match really, I think, improves once the Lumberjacks leave, and then you've got Imperium hitting the Imperial Bomb on their third attempt to finally put MSK away and win the match and regain the NXT tag titles. The Lumberjack stuff seemed kind of pointless to me. Like, they didn't take away from the match, but they didn't add to it either. And like I said, once they were gone after those two big high spots, I think the match kind of improved. Like, the whole go-home sequence with those two teams got very intense, and I was very much there for that. As far as the reign of MSK goes, now that it's over with, you know, I thought it was kind of disappointing. Kind of like how I feel about Raquel Gonzalez's win, where there was all this excitement where, oh man, this is a deserving team, and they're over and everything. And then there was that period of time where they were getting booed, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why they were getting booed, you know, what they were doing that was different that maybe fans like soured on him. And then we find out these reports this week that, oh, apparently there's a vocal minority of fans who were trying to they had an axe to grind with MSK and were trying to sabotage them by booing them intentionally just to be contrarian and allegedly leading some unsavory chants or trying to toward MSK. So I'm glad that has been apparently nipped in the bud. And, you know, I think that might have put a bit of a tarnish on their reign because I don't think it was deserved by any stretch. So we'll see how they rebound after losing the belts. But yeah, Imperium with the belts again. I didn't care much for their last reign when they had it. So we'll see if it can improve this time. Now time for the main event and the match that I've been looking forward to all month for the NXT Championship as Tommaso Ciampa defends against Bron Breakker. And finally, there's one more bit of full circle thing happening with Chucky and Bron Breakker in the little hype package they run before the match where he says, "I bet that you cried yourself to sleep when your old man told you stories about a bloodthirsty killer." You know, that epic encounter many years ago when Chucky and Rick Steiner had a war of words on Monday Nitro. By the way, Ciampa coming out with the God of War costume tonight. Breakker's all about the power here. He's throwing Ciampa around. He's just trying to keep things slow and get back to just basic fundamental wrestling here, but Breakker is just too strong. Ciampa pulls back some padding to expose some concrete on the outside, which we'll get to later. There's more back and forth, and Braun goes for a dive at the second rope at one point, but slips and just eats shit, which like that, I was horrified for him, because talk about a match where they've been literally hyping this whole thing up as like Bron Breakker's biggest test. Sink or swim is what Chucky the Doll said before this match up here. And that had to have been just like a holy shit moment internally. But they did recover, fortunately, and I think they covered for it pretty well. Braun kicks out of the Willow's Bell, and a few minutes later hits a Frankensteiner out of nowhere. A few minutes after that, Ciampa with a huge DDT on Braun on the exposed concrete. Braun is busted open. He kicks out of the fairy tale ending. Ciampa hits 3 big knees, another fairy tale ending, finally puts Breakker away to win and retain the championship, breaking the trend we'd seen all night of titles changing hands. I gotta admit, I think we all kind of thought Bron Breakker was going to win this thing, that he was going to be, the new chosen one to carry NXT 2.0 into the rest of the year and everything. But even in defeat, he looked amazing. Like that one slip up out of the corner, that was one thing, but everything else I think he did phenomenally at, showing his power, showing the intensity, and again, showing the resilience, the fact that he was able, getting up after all those big moves. Like, don't call this a burial, folks. This was the complete opposite of that. Breakker, I think it would have been more impactful had he won. That's my one nitpick about this, but the match itself was fine. I think as far as this big test for Braun, I think he passed with flying colors. He definitely seems geared toward greater things. I think he will become the NXT champion eventually. I wish it were tonight, but that's not the case. But still a really strong main event to end the show. It's too bad they had to go to black right after it was over. Vic Joseph had maybe 5 seconds to say something before they faded to black. And besides that, though, it was a really good main event. My grade for NXT Halloween Havoc is a B-. I gotta give credit where it's due, because the biggest matches on this show, I think, definitely delivered and helped carry the show to this grade. Because, man, it sure wasn't Chucky and Grayson Waller that got me interested in this thing. Like I said, Chucky was good in certain cases, like specifically doing the stuff with like Bron Breakker and alluding to the Steiner stuff. But besides that, I didn't care for him. It was just like synergy for the sake of synergy, and I just felt really cheesy to me. And I think I didn't really care for this year's zombie escapade, like the whole thing with Hayes and Williams going to the haunted house and everything, outside of 1 or 2 moments within that. I was disappointed, like I said, that Bron Breakker didn't win the championship tonight, but I thought their match was fine. C+ didn't seem like a fair grade for this show, given what good there was in it, so that's why I give it a B-. But what did you think of Halloween Havoc, folks? Let me know in the comment section below. Stay tuned for tomorrow night when I'm back reviewing AEW Dynamite, now that it's back on Wednesdays. But there is a bit of a caveat. Next week, I will try my darndest to review NXT and Dynamite at that time, but I will be out of town doing ROH TV tapings. I hope to have time and energy to review those shows, but right now, sadly, it is not guaranteed, and I apologize for that. I hope you guys understand, because I hate the fact that I've been very spotty in reviewing these shows as of late. I hate the fact that I couldn't review the shows last week because I was sick, and so I want to get back into it. I'm not done reviewing these shows at all. It's just a matter of timing and scheduling and convenience at this point. But once again, folks, thank you so much for watching. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.